It's also sparking a legal fight in Florida, where a state law barring businesses from asking an individual's vaccination status is set to go into effect July 1st. The Sunshine State's Republican Governor Ron DeSantis questioning the wisdom of the so-called experts.
We need to do better next time, but we got to recognize some of the problems that occurred, and if we don't, people are not going to have confidence in listening to a lot of the folks. I mean, those Fauci emails, you know, if you read some of this stuff and how different that was than what he was saying in public, you know, really is, I think, very, very problematic.
Now, the governor is currently involved in a legal battle with the CDC over its requirement that 95% of cruise line passengers be vaccinated. Federal judge on Thursday pressed the CDC on just how much it can regulate private industry. And that's where we begin tonight's Is It Legal discussion with former U.S. Attorney Harry Litman and attorney Bryan Rotella. Welcome back to both of you.
Hi, Shannon.
Hi, Shannon.
Hi, Bryan.
So a little bit of this coming from the Tampa Bay Times, talking about the judge questioning in court today. He said he asked the federal lawyers if the government has evidence that masks are effective at limiting the spread of the coronavirus. Quote, where does this mask efficacy theory come from, Mary Day? That's the judge said. We've had masking and social distancing for a long time, and we've had a pandemic in the middle of it. Bryan had a lot of questions today about the limits, what works, what's proven, what's not. But no decision yet on the underlying case. Bryan, can you hear me?
Oh, I'm sorry, Shannon. I didn't hear you. Cut off for a minute. Yes. So Judge Mary Day had a whole bunch of questions today, but my biggest question in this is this. I get concerned when the government's picking winners and losers in one type of or form of entertainment, and that's exactly what seems like is happening and Judge Mary Day is worried about, specifically with this cruise line. It's a 95% requirement for vaccines. Well, that means any kid under 12 can't be on this cruise line, right? Think about it. Disney Cruise Lines, you'd have no kids under 12 on a Disney Cruise Line. But since last July here in Florida, Disney World's been open for no vaccinations. You don't need to have a vaccination. Anyone who's been to Disney World, Pirates of the Caribbean, I don't care if you have a mask on, you're pulling it down, you're sweating, you're coughing, even with social distancing. How can the government say that that's safer where you don't need a vaccine, but you do need a vaccine to be on a boat? That's what I think Judge Mary Day is worried about, Shannon, and that concerns me as well. Excuse the pun. I think he's going to say it's goofy, and I think he may throw this thing out.
Okay, I see what you did there. The judge also was talking about, and the two sides, the attorneys were talking about how much power the CDC has to say about where they draw the line on certain things. The Miami Herald reporting this. When pressed on what level of transmission would require agency action, Amy Powell, who represented the CDC, said legally the agency has the power to try to reduce transmission to zero, which frankly a lot of people think is going to be nearly impossible. Now, James Percival for the state of Florida pounced on that statement. He said if that's true, it's unclear what they cannot do. They can bar your doors. That is an astronomical power. Harry, it's certainly got to have some kind of limits.
They do have the power. They don't use it, but it's just under the Commerce Clause. But look, I think the question to respond to Bryan, cruise ships are 5 times, this is just the science, 5 times more dangerous than other settings. And the main thing that makes sense to me here is there ought to be a consistent rule. It's just bizarre to think that the rule would be different if a cruise ship embarks from Florida than it would in New Orleans. And if there's a consistent one, then it should be, the basic people to set it would be the CDC. You're right, there are nightmare scenarios, but I don't think they've done it here. They've acted pretty responsibly toward a situation where 5 times more dangerous to be on the ships. And he's right, it could mean that some 12-year-olds aren't there, but that's the kind of risk and safety calculation that they're empowered to make, and I think it's sensible for somebody to make across the board.
Well, and report today that on a fully vaccinated cruise, 2 people tested positive. The cruise continued on, Bryan, but nothing is 100%.
Yeah, nothing's 100%, and I understand what Harry's saying. I always look at the unintended consequence here, though, Shannon. I think Harry may agree with me. What worries me about this is if you're requiring these cruise boats to have this vaccination, you're going to start seeing a trial or feeding frenzy with some lawsuits. I think you're going to see a lawsuit because remember, they are not The cruise boats don't have the immunity that Pfizer or Moderna has. If somebody gets
Right.
this vaccine, has a side effect, and also, what about the person who can't get the vaccine who's going to say, I was discriminated against for a disability? I think you're going to start seeing some American with Disability Act cases. I don't think that's good.
Yeah.
More lawsuits.
All right, we got to leave it there.
Yeah, but they'll
thank
sue
you
the
both for weighing-
CDC. Yeah.
Well,
I
they
was just
might.
saying they'll sue this.
I feel lawsuits everywhere when it comes to the vaccine, although you point out no liability for the vaccine makers. They are immune,
Right.
and that's a big part of the puzzle. All right, Harry and Bryan, thank you both.
Thanks.
Thank you, Shannon.